Taeho stood at the top of the mountain. His body was broken. His legs could barely hold him. His arms hung at his sides like dead weight. Every part of him hurt in ways he did not know were possible. But he was standing below him. Silence filled the Royal Gardens. Thousands of aliens looked up at the small, human figure at the top of the mountain of steps. They could not believe what they were seeing. They had watched the trial expecting to see the human fail. They had expected to see him fall in the heat pools, or freeze in the ice caves, or collapse on the stairs. Instead, they watched him win. Kang-Soo was still on his knees, several steps below the top. His powerful body had finally given out. The great warrior who had conquered armies and won battles across the galaxy had lost to a creature half his size. Slowly, Kang-Soo lifted his head. He looked up at Taeho. There was no hatred in his eyes anymore. Only confusion. Only disbelief. How? He asked. His voice was rough and tired. How did you do this? You are just a human. Taeho looked down at him. He wanted to say something clever, something proud, but he was too tired. So he simply told the truth. I just kept moving, he said. One step at a time. Kang-Soo stared at him. Then, slowly, something changed in his face. The confusion faded. Something else took its place. Something that looked almost like respect. One step at a time, Kang-Soo repeated. He lowered his head. Perhaps I have underestimated your kind. From below, the crowd began to react. First, there were whispers. Then murmurs. Then voices grew louder. Aliens talked excitedly to each other. They pointed at the human on the mountain. They said his name, Taeho, the human. The winner. Princess Yuna pushed through the crowd. Her silver dress was dirty from the garden. Her perfect hair was messy. She did not care. She ran to the base of the mountain and looked up with tears in her eyes. Taeho, she called. You did it! You actually did it! Taeho tried to smile, but his legs finally gave out. He collapsed on the stone platform at the top of the mountain. Guards rushed up the stairs. They carried Taeho down gently. Yuna was waiting at the bottom. She took his hand as they laid him on a soft stretcher. Rest now, she said softly. You have done enough. Taeho's eyes were closing. But before he fell asleep, he squeezed her hand. Thank you, he whispered, for believing in me. Yuna smiled through her tears. Thank you for proving me right. Taeho slept for 2 days. When he woke up, he was in a beautiful room in the royal palace. Sunlight streamed through crystal windows. Soft music played somewhere in the distance. He was lying in the most comfortable bed he had ever touched. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then the door opened, and Yuna walked in. You are awake! She rushed to his bedside. The doctor said you pushed your body past its limits. They did not know if you would recover. Taeho sat up slowly. His body was still sore, but he felt much better than before. How long was I asleep? 2 days. You missed a lot. Yuna sat on the edge of his bed. Her golden eyes were bright with happiness. The whole galaxy is talking about you. The human who won the trial of endurance. It is on every news channel. Every planet knows your name. Taeho blinked. Really? Really? Yuna laughed. You have become famous, Taeho. The most famous human in history. Taeho did not know how to feel about that. He had not done this for fame. He had done it for his people. For Earth. For all the humans who would come after him. What happens now? He asked. Now you get dressed. Yuna stood up and walked to a closet. She pulled out a beautiful suit made of fine fabric. It was dark blue with silver thread. The colors of Earth. My father wants to see you. He wants to honor you properly. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall. The same hall where Taeho had stood alone just days before. But now, everything was different. The hall was filled with aliens. Not just nobles, but ordinary people too. They had come from all over the planet to see the human who had won the trial. They lined the walls and filled the balconies above. Taeho walked down the center of the hall. He wore the suit Yuna had given him. Beside him walked Princess Yuna herself, her hand resting lightly on his arm. At the end of the hall, the king sat on his throne. The queen was beside him. They watched Taeho approach with serious expressions. Taeho knelt before the throne. His heart was beating fast, but he kept his face calm. The king stood up. His voice filled the hall. Lieutenant Taeho of Earth, you came to our world as a stranger. You were ignored, insulted, mocked, but you did not give up. You faced the trial of endurance and won against beings far stronger than yourself. The king paused. You have shown us something important. Strength is not just about power. It is about will. Oh, about heart. About the courage to keep going when everything seems impossible. The king raised his hand. A guard came forward carrying a small box. Inside was a metal made of golden crystal. It glowed with soft light. This is the Star of Valoria, our highest honor. It has only been given to a handful of beings in our history. Today, I give it to you. The king placed the medal around Taeho's neck. The crowd erupted in cheers. Aliens who had looked down on him before now clapped and shouted his name. Taeho stood up. He looked out at the crowd. He saw faces from dozens of species. Some were smiling. Some were crying. All of them were looking at him with new eyes. But the face he looked for most was Yuna's. She was standing nearby, her hands clasped together, tears streaming down her cheeks. The king continued. From this day forward, Lieutenant Taeho is an honored guest of the Valorian throne. He will always have a place in our kingdom. And through him, humanity will always have a friend in the stars. More cheers. More applause. The noise was overwhelming. Later that night, after the ceremony was over, Taeho stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The purple sky was filled with stars. Flying vehicles moved through the air like fireflies. It was beautiful. Yuna joined him. They stood side by side, looking at the sky. Everything is different now, Yuna said softly. Because of you. Because of us, Taeho corrected. You were the one who took my hand. You were the one who believed in me when no one else did. Yuna smiled. I saw something in you. From the moment you walked into that banquet. You were scared and alone, but you refused to leave. That takes a special kind of strength. Taeho nodded slowly. When I was standing there, with everyone ignoring me, I almost gave up. I almost walked out. But then I thought about all the people back on Earth who were counting on me. All the humans who would come after me. I could not let them down. Yuna turned to face him. What will you do now? Taeho thought about it. His mission was complete. He could go back to Earth. He could return to his normal life. But something had changed inside him. He was not the same person who had landed on this planet. I want to stay, he said. For a while at least. I want to learn more about your people. About all the species in the galaxy. I want to help build bridges between our worlds. Yuna's eyes lit up. I would like that. I would like that very much. They stood together in the starlight. A human and a princess. Two beings from different worlds. Different lives. Different histories. But in that moment, none of that mattered. They were just two friends, looking up at the same stars far below. In the streets of the city, news was spreading. Stories of the human who won the trial, of his courage, his endurance, his hard and on a small blue planet millions of light years away. Those stories would soon arrive. They would inspire a new generation of humans to reach for the stars, to believe that they, too, could do impossible things. The night Taeho could not find an empty seat at the royal banquet. The night, a princess took his hand and said, "Rest beside me." That night changed everything. And it was only the beginning. The banquet was almost over when Kang-soo made his move. The king had just finished giving a speech about peace and cooperation among species. Everyone was clapping. The mood was light. Aliens were preparing to leave, saying goodbye to their friends and allies. Then Kang-soo stood up again. "Your Majesty," he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "Before we end this wonderful evening, I would like to propose something." The king looked at him with tired eyes. "What is it, Lord Kang-soo?" "A tradition. An old one." Kang-soo smiled. "The trial of endurance." Whispers filled the hall. The trial of endurance was an ancient test. It had not been held in over 100 years. It was simple but brutal. Participants would face a series of physical challenges. The last one standing would win glory and honor for their species. Many had died in past trials. The trial? The king frowned. "That is a dangerous tradition. Why would you want to bring it back?" Kang-soo spread his arms wide. "Because we have so many great warriors here tonight. Representatives from the mightiest species in the galaxy. What better way to celebrate our strength?" He paused, his eyes moving to Taeho. "And we have a new species among us. The humans. Perhaps they would like to show us what they are made of." Every eye turned to Tae-Ho. Yuna grabbed his arm. "Do not listen to him. This is a trap. The trial is designed for species much stronger than humans." Taeho knew she was right. He had read about the trial in his studies. Beings had died from the heat, from the cold, from exhaustion. It was not a fair competition. It was a way for the strong to crush the weak. But if he refused, every alien in this hall would remember. They would remember the human who was too scared to face a challenge. They would use it as proof that humans were cowards. That Kang-soo was right. Taeho thought about Earth again. He thought about the stories his grandmother used to tell him. Stories about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Soldiers who had marched through frozen mountains. Explorers who had crossed burning deserts. Scientists who had worked until their bodies gave out. Humans were not strong, not compared to these aliens. But they had something else. Something harder to see. They never gave up. Taeho stood up. The hall went quiet. "I accept," he said. Gasps filled the air. Yuna looked at him with shock. "Taeho, no. You cannot." "I can," he said gently. He looked at her with calm eyes. "I have to? For my people?" Kang-soo laughed with delight. "Wonderful. The human has courage, at least. Let us see if he has anything else." The king looked troubled. "The trial has not been prepared. We do not have the proper grounds." "The royal gardens," Kang-soo said quickly. "They have everything we need. Heat pools, ice caves, the mountain of steps. We can begin tonight." The king looked at his daughter. Yuna was shaking her head, but Taeho gave a small nod. "Very well," the king said slowly. "The trial of endurance will begin in 1 hour. All who wish to participate may join." Aliens began talking excitedly. Some stood up to join the trial. Warriors from different species. Creatures of all sizes. They all wanted to prove their strength. Taeho counted them. 12 competitors in total. 13, including himself. He was the smallest by far. Most of the others were twice his size. Yuna walked with him to the gardens. "This is madness," she said. "The first challenge alone could kill you." The heat pools reached temperatures that would boil human blood. "I know," Taeho said. "Then why? Why are you doing this?" Taeho stopped walking. He looked up at the purple sky. The stars were beginning to appear, bright points of light scattered across the darkness. "When I was a child," he said, "my father took me hiking. We climbed a mountain near our home. It was not a big mountain, not compared to others, but to me, it felt impossible. My legs hurt. My lungs burned. I wanted to stop." Yuna listened quietly, but my father told me something I never forgot. He said that the mountain does not care how strong you are. It only cares if you keep moving. One step at a time. That is all you need. One more step. Taeho looked at Yuna. "I may not be as strong as them. I may not be as fast, but I know how to keep moving. I know how to take one more step." Yuna stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. "You are a strange human, Taeho. Thank you." She laughed softly. It was a compliment. The trial began at midnight. The first challenge was the heat pools. Large pools of glowing red liquid, heated by underground fire. Participants had to cross them on narrow stone bridges. The heat rising from below was intense. Deadly. Two competitors fell within the first minute. The heat overwhelmed them. They collapsed and were pulled away by guards. They survived, but their trial was over. Taeho walked slowly across the bridge. The heat was like nothing he had ever felt. His skin felt like it was burning. His eyes watered. Every breath was painful, but he kept moving. One step, then another. One more step. He made it across, barely. His uniform was soaked with sweat. His hands were trembling, but he had survived. The second challenge was the ice caves. Tunnels carved through frozen rock. The temperature dropped so quickly that some species could not handle the change. Their bodies locked up. Their hearts slowed. 4 more competitors fell. Taeho crawled through the caves. The cold bit into his bones. His fingers went numb. He could not feel his feet. But he thought about the Arctic explorers from Earth's history. Men and women who had crossed the frozen poles with nothing but courage and determination. He kept moving. The third challenge was the mountain of steps, a tower of stone stairs, each step higher than the last. It stretched up into the clouds. Competitors had to climb to the top. By now, only 5 remained. Taeho, Kang-soo, and 3 others. They began to climb. The stairs were brutal. Each one required jumping to reach. Taeho's legs screamed in pain. His muscles burned. He fell behind quickly. Kang-soo laughed as he passed him. "Give up, human. This is not your place." But Taeho did not give up. He climbed, slowly, painfully, one step at a time. Hours passed. The other competitors began to slow. Even Kang-soo was struggling. The mountain seemed endless. One competitor gave up. Then another. Then the third. Only Taeho and Kang-soo remained. Kang-soo was ahead, but not by much. And he was tired. Taeho could see it. The great warrior was reaching his limit. Taeho kept climbing. His body was broken. His mind was foggy. But somewhere deep inside, a fire still burned. A human fire. The same fire that had driven his ancestors to cross oceans and climb mountains and reach for the stars. One more step. Just one more. The top of the mountain appeared. Kang-soo was almost there. Just a few more steps. But then something happened. Kang-soo stumbled. His tired legs gave out. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. Tae-ho passed him. He did not look back. He did not celebrate. He just kept climbing. One more step. And then he was there. At the top of the mountain. The first to arrive. Below him, the entire banquet hall had gathered to watch. They stared up in disbelief. The human had won. Lord Kang-soo was not a patient being. He came from a planet called Drakkar. where strength was everything. His people were warriors. They had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Galactic Empire. They were tall, powerful, and covered in thick scales that could stop a laser blast. Kangsu himself had fought in 3 major wars. He had killed hundreds of enemies with his own hands. He wore the scars on his body like medals. Every mark on his dark green scales told a story of battle and victory. And now, he watched a human sit at the royal table. A human, the weakest species in the galaxy, sitting in the seat of honor. Beside the princes. It was an insult. Not just to him, but to everyone in the hall. To every noble who had worked for centuries to earn that honor. To every warrior who had spilled blood for the Empire. Kangsu stood up from his table. The aliens around him grew quiet. They knew that look in his eyes. They had seen it before battle. He walked toward the royal platform. His heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. Other aliens moved out of his way quickly. No one wanted to stand between Kangsu and his target. Taeho saw him coming. He felt his stomach tighten. The alien was huge, at least 8 feet tall. His arms were thick with muscle. His eyes were red, like burning coals. Yuna saw him too. She placed her hand gently on Taeho's arm. "Do not worry," she whispered. "He cannot hurt you here." But Taeho was not so sure. Kangsu stopped at the bottom of the royal platform. He did not bow. He did not show respect. He simply stared at Taeho with hatred in his eyes. "So this is the human everyone is talking about," Kangsu said. His voice was deep and rough. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "I have heard stories about your kind. Small, weak. You cannot even survive in space without your little machines." Taeho said nothing. He kept his face calm. His captain had taught him this. In diplomacy, sometimes silence was the best answer. But Kangsu was not finished. He looked at Yuna with a cold smile. "Princess, I must ask, why do you dishonor your family by bringing this creature to your table? Is it a pet? Do you find it amusing?" The hall went silent. Every alien watched with wide eyes. No one spoke to the princess like that. No one. Yuna's eyes grew hard. "Lord Kangsu, you forget yourself. Lieutenant Taeho is a guest of the royal family. He represents his people with honor." "Honor?" Kangsu laughed. The sound was ugly. "What honor can a human have? They are barely more than animals. They have been in space for only 50 years. They have no history, no power, no worth." Taeho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept it down. He would not give this alien the satisfaction of seeing him upset. Kangsu continued. "My people have a saying. You can judge a species by its strength. The strong survive. The weak die. It is the way of the universe." He leaned forward, his red eyes fixed on Taeho. "And humans? Humans are the weakest of all. You will be forgotten in a few centuries. A small footnote in galactic history. That is enough." The king's voice cut through the air. He had been watching silently, but now he spoke. "Lord Kangsu, this is a banquet, not a battlefield. Control yourself." Kangsu bowed his head slightly. "Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no disrespect to you. Only to the human. The human is my daughter's guest. Disrespect to him is disrespect to her." Kangsu's jaw tightened. He clearly wanted to say more, but even he would not openly challenge the king. "As you wish, Your Majesty." He turned to leave, but then he stopped. He looked back at Taeho one more time. "Tell me, human, on your planet, do you have any warriors? Any soldiers who have actually fought in battle?" Taeho met his gaze. For the first time, he spoke. "Yes, we have many. And have they ever faced a real enemy? Not animals. Not machines. A real enemy who could fight back?" Taeho thought about Earth's history. He thought about all the wars humans had fought against each other. Terrible wars. Wars that had killed millions. He thought about soldiers who had charged into battle knowing they would die. He thought about pilots who had crashed their planes into enemy ships to save their friends. Yes, Teho said quietly. We have faced many enemies. Kang-Su smiled. It was not a kind smile. Then perhaps you are not completely worthless. But words are easy. I would like to see proof. Yuna stood up. Lord Kang-Su, I warn you. If you are thinking of challenging our guest, I would never challenge someone so beneath me, Kang-Su said. That would be like fighting a child. There is no honor in it. He looked at Teho again. But know this, human. You do not belong here. You do not deserve that seat. And one day, everyone will see the truth. He turned and walked back to his table. His companions welcomed him with nods and smiles. They agreed with everything he had said. Teho let out a slow breath. His hands were shaking under the table. He had faced danger before. He had been in space battles. He had almost died twice. But this was different. This was personal. Yuna sat back down. She looked at Teho with concern. I am sorry. Kang-Su is a fool. His words mean nothing. They mean something to the others, Teho said. He looked around the hall. Most aliens were not looking at him anymore, but he could feel their judgment, their agreement with Kang-Su's words. They all think the same thing, that I do not belong here. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she said, when I was young, I visited a planet on the edge of the galaxy. It was a small world, barely known to anyone. The people there were tiny, smaller than my hand. Other species called them weak, useless. But do you know what they did? Teho shook his head. They built machines, Yuna said. Amazing machines that could do things no other species had ever done. They changed the galaxy. Not with strength, not with size, but with their minds. She smiled at Teho. Strength is not just about muscles and power. Real strength comes from here. She touched her chest, over her heart. And here. She touched her head. Teho felt something warm spread through him. Hope. He had almost forgotten what it felt like. Thank you. Princess, he said softly. Call me Yuna. He looked at her in surprise. Princesses did not let commoners use their names. It was against all the rules, but Yuna just smiled. I told you. You are my guest, and I think we are going to be friends. Around them, the banquet continued. Aliens ate and drank. Music played. But something had changed. A line had been drawn. On one side was Lord Kang-Su and those who believed in strength and power. On the other side was Princess Yuna and a single human who refused to give up. And somewhere in the shadows, plans were being made. Kang-Su was not finished. He had been insulted in front of everyone. His pride demanded revenge. He would find a way to destroy the human. To prove, once and for all, that humans were nothing. He just needed the right moment. And as the night went on, that moment drew closer. Princess Yuna was not like other members of the royal family. She did not care about power or wealth. She did not enjoy the games that nobles played. While others spent their time collecting treasures and building armies, Yuna spent her time reading books and visiting distant worlds. She was young for a Valorian, only 300 years old. Her people lived for thousands of years, so she was considered almost a child. But she had seen more of the galaxy than most. She had traveled to planets that her father had never heard of. She had met species that others thought were only legends. And in all her travels, she had learned one important lesson. The value of a person was not in their strength or their age or their power. It was in their heart. Tonight, as she sat at the royal table, she felt bored. The same faces. The same conversations. The same empty words. Everyone wanted something from her. Everyone wanted to use her to gain favor with the king. But then the human walked in. Yuna had seen humans before. Once, on a small trading station near the edge of the galaxy. They were rare creatures. Their planet had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most aliens did not think much of them. Humans were soft, fragile. They lived for less than 100 years. They had no special abilities. But Yuna remembered what she had seen on that trading station. A human woman caring for a wounded alien child. The child was from a species that had been at war with humans just years before. But the woman did not care. She bandaged the child's wounds. She sang to it. She held it until help came. That moment had stayed with Yuna. It had taught her that humans were different. Not weaker, just different. Now, watching Taeho stand alone in the great hall, she felt her heart grow heavy. She saw how the others treated him. She saw how they laughed and whispered. She saw how they refused to let him sit down. It made her angry. But it also made her curious. Why did he not leave? Any other being would have walked out by now. Any other being would have felt too ashamed to stay. But this human just stood there, waiting, hoping. His face was tired, but his eyes were still bright. Yuna turned to her mother. Who is that human? The queen looked at Taeho with little interest. Some representative from Earth, I believe. Their real diplomat became ill. They sent this one instead. He has been standing for almost an hour. Yes, the queen shrugged. Humans do not understand our ways. He probably does not know he should leave. Yuna frowned. Or maybe he knows exactly what is happening, and he is choosing to stay anyway. The queen laughed softly. You always see things that are not there, my daughter. He is just a human. They are simple creatures. But Yuna did not agree. She kept watching Taeho. She saw how he straightened his uniform, how he took deep breaths to calm himself, how he looked at the aliens around him with curiosity instead of fear. No, this was not a simple creature. This was someone special. An hour passed. The banquet continued. Food was served. Drinks were poured. The great hall filled with the sounds of celebration. But Taeho remained standing by the wall, alone and forgotten. Yuna could not take it anymore. She stood up from her seat. The movement was sudden. The aliens at the nearby tables turned to look at her. Even the king and queen looked surprised. Yuna? Her father said. Where are you going? I need some air, she said softly. But she did not walk toward the doors. She walked toward the human. The hall grew quiet. Conversation stopped. Every eye followed the princess as she walked down the steps of the royal platform. Her silver dress flowed behind her like water. Her long black hair moved gently with each step. Taeho did not notice at first. He was too busy staring at the floor, trying to make himself invisible. But then he heard the whispers. He heard the surprised gasps. He looked up, and he saw her. The princess was walking toward him. The princess of the Valorian Empire. One of the most important people in the entire galaxy. Walking toward him, Taeho felt his heart stop. He did not know what to do. Should he bow? Should he kneel? Should he run away? But before he could decide, Yuna was already standing in front of him. She was tall, taller than him. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were the color of gold. She was beautiful in a way that Taeho had never seen before. Not just in her face, but in the way she held herself. There was kindness in her eyes, warmth, understanding. You are the human, she said. Her voice was soft, musical. Taeho bowed quickly. Yes, Your Highness. I am Lieutenant Taeho from Earth. I am here on behalf of my planet. Yuna smiled. You have been standing for a very long time. Yes, Your Highness. There were no empty seats. I saw. Her smile faded a little. She looked around the hall at all the aliens who were watching them. Then she looked back at Taeho. They should be ashamed. Taeho did not know what to say. He had not expected this. He had not expected anyone to care. Yuna held out her hand. Her fingers were long and delicate. They glowed faintly with soft light. Come with me, she said. Taeho stared at her hand. He did not understand. Your Highness? There's an empty seat beside me, at the royal table. She smiled again, and this time her smile was bright and warm. Rest beside me. The hall erupted in whispers. Aliens gasped. Some laughed. Some looked angry. The seat beside the princess was reserved for the most honored guests. Kings and emperors had sat in that seat. Generals who had won great wars. Scholars who had changed the galaxy. No human had ever sat there before. No human had ever been invited. But Yuna did not seem to care what others thought. She kept her hand extended. She kept her eyes on Tae-Ho. Taeho's mind raced. He thought about the rules. He thought about what his captain would say. He thought about all the aliens who were watching him with anger in their eyes. But then he looked at Yuna, at her kind eyes, at her gentle smile. And he made a decision. He took her hand. Her fingers were cool and soft. They wrapped around his hand gently. And as they touched, Taeho felt something strange. A warmth spreading through his body. A feeling of peace. Yuna turned and began walking back to the royal platform. Taeho walked beside her. He could feel the stares. He could hear the whispers. But with Yuna by his side, he did not feel afraid anymore. They climbed the steps together. The king and queen watched them with wide eyes. But they said nothing. Even they would not challenge their daughter in public. Yuna led Taeho to the empty seat beside her own. It was made of crystal and gold. It was more beautiful than anything Taeho had ever seen. Sit, Yuna said. Rest. Taeho sat down slowly. The seat was comfortable. More comfortable than any chair on Earth. Yuna sat beside him. She picked up a glass of glowing liquid and handed it to him. Drink. You must be thirsty. Taeho took the glass. His hands were shaking. Thank you, Your Highness. I do not understand why you are being so kind to me. Yuna looked at him. Her golden eyes studied his face. Because you stayed, she said simply. Because they tried to break you, and you refused to leave. That takes strength. Real strength. Taeho felt tears forming in his eyes. He quickly looked away so she would not see, but Yuna saw. And she smiled. Tonight, she said softly, you are not a nobody. Tonight, you are my guest. And anyone who insults you insults me. Around them, the banquet continued. But everything had changed. The human who had been ignored was now sitting at the royal table. And the princess who never cared about politics had just made the boldest statement of the night. In the shadows of the great hall, a pair of cold eyes watched them. Lord Kansu, a powerful noble from a warrior species, gripped his glass so hard it cracked. He would not let this stand. Not for a moment. The ship landed softly on the crystal platform. Taeho looked out the small window and saw a world he had only seen in pictures before. Planet Veloria was beautiful. The sky was purple and pink, like a sunset that never ended. Tall towers made of white stone rose into the clouds. Gardens filled with silver flowers covered the ground below. Taeho took a deep breath. He was nervous. Very nervous. He was just a simple lieutenant from Earth. He had joined the Space Force 5 years ago. He had worked hard. He had studied alien languages. He had learned their customs. But he never thought he would be here, at the royal banquet of the Galactic Empire, His captain had fallen sick just 2 days before the trip. There was no one else to send. So they sent Taeho, a young man of 28 years, a nobody from a small town in Korea. Now he was about to walk into a room full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. He checked his uniform one more time. It was simple, dark blue with silver buttons. Earth did not have fancy clothes like the other planets. They did not have gold thread or floating gems. They only had what they could make with their own hands. The door of the ship opened. A tall alien guard stood outside. The guard had blue skin and 4 eyes. He looked at Taeho with something like disgust. "Human," the guard said. His voice was cold. "You are late." Taeho bowed his head. "I am sorry. The journey was long." The guard said nothing. He simply turned and walked away. Taeho followed him quickly. They walked through long hallways made of glass. Taeho could see the city below. Flying vehicles moved through the air like fish in water. Aliens of all kinds walked on the streets. Some had wings. Some had tails. Some had no legs at all. Taeho had never seen so many different species in one place. Finally, they reached 2 large doors. They were made of pure gold. Strange symbols were carved into them. The guard pressed his hand against a panel, and the doors began to open. The sound hit Taeho first. Music, laughter, hundreds of voices talking at once. Then he saw the room. It was the biggest room he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that clouds floated inside it. Real clouds. Lights hung in the air like floating stars. Long tables stretched across the floor, covered with food and drinks from 1,000 worlds. And everywhere, there were aliens. Important aliens. Taeho recognized some of them from his studies. There was the Prime Minister of the Krull Federation, a giant creature made of living stone. There was the Admiral of the Siren Fleet, a being of pure light. There were princes and generals, merchants and scholars, and they all looked at Taeho. For a moment, the room became quiet. Eyes turned toward the door, toward the human who had just walked in. Taeho felt his face grow hot. He tried to smile. He tried to look confident. But inside, his heart was beating fast. Then, just as quickly, they looked away. They returned to their conversations. They returned to their food and their drinks. Taeho was not worth their attention. He was just a human. Humans were new to the galaxy. They were weak. They were small. They had no special powers. They could not fly or breathe fire or live for 1,000 years. In the eyes of these great beings, humans were nothing. Taeho walked into the room slowly. He looked for an empty seat. The tables were arranged in a circle around a central platform. On that platform sat the royal family of Valoria. The king was an old alien with white hair and golden robes. Beside him sat the queen, covered in jewels. And next to her sat the princess. Taeho did not look at her for long. He was too busy trying to find a place to sit. He walked past the first table. It was full. Every seat was taken by large aliens with sharp teeth. They growled at him as he walked by. He moved to the second table. Full again. This time, the aliens simply ignored him. They turned their backs and continued eating. The third table. The fourth. The fifth. All of them were full. And the few empty seats he saw were quickly taken when he came close. Aliens would slide into them just before he could sit down. They would place bags on them. They would claim they were saving them for someone else. Taeho understood what was happening. They did not want him to sit with them. They did not want a human at their table. His face burned with shame. He kept walking. He kept looking. But there was nowhere for him to go. Some aliens laughed at him. Others whispered to each other. He heard words like pathetic and animal and primitive. He pretended not to hear. He kept his head high. But inside, he wanted to disappear. 20 minutes passed. Tejo was still standing. His legs were starting to hurt. He had traveled across the galaxy, and now he was standing in the middle of a banquet like a lost child. He thought about leaving. Maybe he should just go back to his ship. Maybe he did not belong here. Maybe his captain was right. Humans were not ready for the galactic stage. They were too new, too weak, too small. But then he thought about Earth. He thought about all the people back home who were counting on him. He thought about his mother, who had cried when he left. He thought about his father, who had shaken his hand and told him to make them proud. He could not give up. Not yet. So he kept standing. He found a spot near the wall and waited. He watched the aliens eat and drink and laugh. He watched them enjoy themselves while he stood alone. Time passed slowly. The music played. The lights danced. And Tejo stood there, forgotten by everyone. Or so he thought. Because from her seat on the royal platform, someone was watching him. Someone with curious eyes and a gentle smile. Someone who had noticed the human from the moment he walked in. Princess Yuna had seen many banquets in her life. She had seen countless aliens come and go. But she had never seen anyone like this human. Never seen anyone stand so alone and yet refuse to leave. Never seen anyone hold their head high while being treated so badly. She watched him for a long time. And slowly, an idea began to form in her mind. An idea that would change everything.